Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Internet of Learning podcast. I'm your host, Rajiv Shenoy, the CTO of Apogee, higher education's largest managed technology services provider. We launched this podcast to help keep our community of university leaders connected on how technology, leadership, and managing through change can power university strategic goals into the future. In this episode, we meet with Tara LaChapell, CIO of Ripon College. It's an interesting discussion on the nuances of small town colleges and how leadership is massively important in order to keep Ripon relevant and competitive through the use of technology. Tara shares how her team had to undergo a turnaround of sorts in order for the IT team to be a strategic asset for the entire institution. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did hosting it. Thanks.
Tara, hello. How are you? Welcome to the Internet of Learning.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. How's your week been? What's new in the world of Ripon, Wisconsin?
Well, as you may have heard, we had some severe weather, the polar vortex to be exact, and it left us a nice little parting gift of frozen pipes that leaked into several rooms in our IT center and
Oh no.
damaged, one of which was our data center, damaging 2 racks of equipment. Just happened to be, sadly, Apogee's equipment. So they are literally on site as we speak, replacing some of the equipment and helping to get us back up and running. So
Oh, it's such an interesting problem. I mean, you hear so many crazy things. I mean, so one, weather. Tell us a little bit about Ripon. It's a tiny town. There's like 8,000 people. Tell us more about Ripon, what got you there, and how weather plays a role in IT.
Okay, Ripon itself is a small rural community. It's funny because people, when I say I live in Ripon, who know the area, they're like, how do you live in Ripon? It's in the middle of nowhere. And I always laugh because I said, I think their new tagline should really be Ripon in the middle of everywhere. Because we're literally like an hour from a lot of larger areas, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Appleton. So we literally are like an hour from everywhere and very centrally located. So even though it's a small city itself or rural community, having the college there kind of provides a larger feel and more diversity than a typical rural city in Wisconsin would have. That's the same size. So that being said, how did I get here? It's interesting. I actually started, I'm an alum, so I graduated from Ripon a couple years ago and started my career actually in education where I taught for years. And then I majored in computer science when I was in college and always knew I'd want to get back into the tech field someday. And it just so happened, long story short, that my son applied and was accepted to Ripon. And when we were online filling out his paperwork, I saw this position posted. And so I applied. And, that was a little over 5 years ago, almost 6 years now that I've been here.
What was his reaction when you also applied? Was he like, no, Mom, don't come to college with me? Or was he excited?
Yeah, so I've always kind of had a closer relationship. I have 2 sons. And so the beauty of it is he really only needed to see me when he wanted to. And so
Nice.
it was more of a convenience for him to have me around, when he needed some groceries
Right.
or, a little help. So he really could dictate how much we interacted or how much he saw me. So he didn't mind at all.
I love it. Sons and their moms. I was totally the same way, and my son is identical. As much as I want him to be a daddy's boy, you can never separate a son from his mom like that. That's amazing. So, what was it like when you first joined? What was IT at Ripon like when you first joined? Was it an exciting place? Were there challenges? Obviously, what was the environment like when you first got there?
I really didn't know what I was walking into. I mean, I thought this was a position that couldn't have been scripted any better, to be honest. It was a great transition for me back into the tech world because even though I got to be involved in a lot of technology in the 20 years I was teaching, it really was a different facet. So I thought this will be a great opportunity. I was hired as associate director, and the current director, previous director, was set to retire 3 to 4 years out. So I just saw it as a great opportunity where it was a good stepping stone to use both my educational and technology skills. So a good fit for that, and then be trained and see what happened in 4 years when he retired. So little curveball was thrown. He was they came down and fired him 4.5 months after I started. Months.
Oh my God.
And so it kind of threw the department, as you can imagine, into a bit of a tailspin. And then there was a legal matter where he was embezzling money. So when you talk about the culture, when I started here, I had no idea what I was walking into. And so when you talk baptism by fire of just being thrown into a situation.
Amazing.
It's an interesting story, I'll tell you that. But
well, it's fascinating. And, I'm sorry that happened, but we talk a lot about transformation in higher ed, especially when it comes to IT. You were forced to transform that environment, obviously. So where did you start? How big is your team? How did you create a cultural shift within the college? What was it like following someone who, ethically was doing things wrong? I mean, where did you even begin? How did you change it? And where is it now?
Talk about life lessons. It was one of the best life lessons on the significance and importance of trust and relationship in leadership and in the culture of a campus and change management. All of those things, you can imagine, we kind of started from ground up. So probably one of the things that I would say was our greatest accomplishment was just establishing and working to repair the relationships with other departments on campus, and really working to grow and develop the outreach and get them to trust us as decision makers and partners again. So our staff, I couldn't have done it obviously on my own, and they were incredible. So the support that we provided for one another to get through that, and I think getting through a situation like that really makes you stronger and builds you closer together. If it can, break you or bring you closer, and it really was something that I would say we came out stronger on the other side. The other part of it that was kind of, it could be seen as an advantage is because there weren't real strict policies and procedures in place, we really got to build and establish kind of our philosophy and our policies and procedures for the department from ground up. So you could see that as a positive coming out of it, that it was a great process to go through. And now we kind of we're to the point now, 5 years later, of really, I feel like we have our feet on the ground and kind of have a good direction and a good vision for what we want our department to be and how we want to serve the campus community. So
awesome. So I got a lot of follow-up questions because that's insanely cool. And, in the private world, we call that a turnaround. So one, you said establishing and repairing relationships with the community. Did you have a town hall? Did you just send a tweet out? Did you text everyone? I mean, how do you fix something like that?
Yes, campus community more is what I was referencing at that point, but we have a wonderful director of marketing and communications who played a huge role along with our HR department and several other leaders on campus that did a lot of the repairing outside of campus, with the community relations and just with other people even trusting the campus, because you can imagine that impact had a serious ripple effect. So we didn't have to worry quite as much about the outreach, that part of it.
Right.
We just were able to focus and mainly manage the campus relationships. And that was enough. That was plenty, because we are a small staff. I don't know if we are only 5. And at that time we were 4. And not only did we have the normal workload of day-to-day operations of this institution, we then had to contribute to the legal investigation, which is a lot of information gathering for them. So it was a big task, but one that we really kind of embraced and just worked together to get through.
So switching gears a little bit, I loved how you said we got to build the philosophy and governance on our own and from scratch. what is that philosophy at Ripon? And then you said 5 years later, we finally have our feet on the ground. So what's next? So you've built this philosophy. So what is it? And then now that you've established this better culture, where are you going from here?
So I should say we're just establishing, like we're really in the developmental phase and kind of final phases of that process, because it took us a while, significant amount of time, because we had a windfall of money that came out, that then we had these projects to manage, and it was really a lot just to keep everything going, running. We really couldn't even start thinking about policies, procedures, drafting documents. It was all hands on deck just to get us through that. So I would say that was a good 2 to 3 years of just managing kind of the after effect of that and getting our campus back up to where it should have been technology-wise, because some of the things were neglected due to money going to other things. I'll just say that. So, instead of our campus resources going to our campus, they were external. So it was getting things caught back up, and really it takes a while. I would say, we're still developing a lot of our processes. They had processes, I'll say that, but they didn't have real formal procedures that were communicated out to others. And so a lot of the decisions were made around campus in very siloed department areas. And one of the things that we've been a part of and really pushing hard toward is opening that up and making a lot of the decisions at an institutional level, not at a department level. And so that's where we're at right now, is really working with others on campus to help enable that, where we're providing a lot of the information for others to be able to make educated decisions instead of running around campus troubleshooting LaserJet printers, for example. So, it's we've really tried to do
that with such a small team, right? I mean, with such a small team, you got to figure out a way to operationalize the things that are necessary and then refocus them to something that's more strategic. I mean, that's basically what I heard you say just now. I mean, how do you do that with such a small team? And I guess the way I look at this is one of the hottest topics outside of higher ed is automation. There's an estimate that like 40% of all jobs will be automated by 2030. Are you using automation with such a small team in order to have everyone focus on strategy, or how do you achieve that? How are ways that you've operationalized part of the organization to refocus on some of the strategy?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. And because of our size, I think larger institutions were forced to automate some of the tasks because it just wasn't manageable. And there was such a significant gain to automating them, the day-to-day operations. And that's one of the things about being a small institution. Right now we're at approximately 800 students, is that some of the things are manageable without automating the tasks. So we are now just really getting to that point of, okay, you can do it and you can manage, but is it the best use of your time and resources? And that's outside of IT as well. And so part of our shift in automation is helping other departments kind of evaluate processes that they're doing that they could automate and free up their time as well. So not just IT tasks that could be automated, but simple things like registration and assigning roommates, the room assignment things, that there are technology and tools that could help them do that a little more efficiently, and then helping them decide which ones make sense and which ones don't, taking culture into taken into consideration for each task. So.
Yeah, I love that. And what I love about it is, it's just my personal take, but I've always believed that IT should be moving more and more into the problem-solving mind frame. I call it the entrepreneurial mindset, where you find a problem and you solve it, versus the traditional way that IT has been run as a service to deliver technology. And it's a nuance different, but you just hit it on the head, right? We're going to go to registration and see if there's ways that we could create better efficiencies for registrations in the registrar's office. Again, I'm just so intrigued. You only have 5 people on your team. And even though the school is so small, how do you then prioritize it, right? As the director and the leader of this group, how do you say, these are the 3 or 4 things that we're going to focus on, and let's find better solutions to do the rest? And then the second part of that is, what are the 3 things that you are focused on from an innovation standpoint
So the first thing is we talk a lot as a department and kind of discuss what makes sense, what doesn't, what our options are out there. And it's hard with only 5 people to really even have the time to research what's out there. So one of the huge things is something like you're providing with this podcast of networking and really using our resources of networking with other schools, other directors, and sharing information. So we're not reinventing the wheel. And that sharing of information is so powerful. So that kind of gives us some insight as to options and things that are out there to help us make decisions on prioritizing what makes sense. Position-wise, you take someone like we have our director of enterprise applications, who, when I started, was also doing staff desktop support. And so when we looked at that, and he literally was, tier 1 support on the desktop issues that would arise for any staff member, and that included printers. So when I looked at his use of time, his abilities, his knowledge, he had been here over 25 years.
Wow.
He had great institutional knowledge, and we had him out changing rollers in a printer. It didn't make sense. So, when we talked about things he wanted to do and things that were priorities to him and important to him, it was easy to see that role needed to be shifted somewhere else and allow him the opportunity to start working with the departments. Right now, one of our priorities, when you talk about 3 things that we're really working on, is he's evaluating our ERP system. And there's all these third parties. So it's always this best of breed or all-in-one solution to things on campus, right? So really trying to work with things at an institutional level, because everybody was kind of off doing their own thing. And Gary was kind of called in more to just troubleshoot and get things done on the technical side. But they weren't really using him on the front end for planning and selection, and making and using his knowledge to make educated, informed decisions about the products that all these vendors are trying to sell them. So we have really shifted that focus now, and it's using his abilities instead of out doing tier 1 support to use all the data and knowledge that he has so that the campus can make those huge, large-scale decisions and really utilize. When you have limited resources, both financial and personnel, those are things that can really have a big impact on getting more done for your money, right? And being able to accomplish more as an institution. So that would kind of be one example of a way that we've tried to use automation and use things and select. We, instead of managing our printers, we revamped the whole print environment, and we went to managed print services. So we got rid of all the individual laser jets. We had over 100 around campus, and we, replaced them with 30 MFPs that were then managed outside of our department. We outsourced that, and that's been a huge impact on the efficiency of our department and our ability to use our time on other things. So.
Right. So I guess, again, switching gears just a little bit, that makes complete sense. And I find that everyone focuses on the ERP because it's such an operationally important part of running the business. But at a small school like Ripon with 800 students, you said, are you using technology to recruit students? Are you partnering with the Office of Enrollment? What about student satisfaction side of things? I mean, how are you leveraging technology and, the newfound problem-solving mentality to have that white glove Ripon College experience for the students? How are you meeting the students where they are and where they want to be?
Yeah, so they have, they rely heavily on technology, I would say. We're right now trying to evaluate how we can use our CRM more effectively. And, they talk cradle to grave CRM, where that data that you're gathering from day one follows that student all the way along through their, all their academic information, and then as they graduate and they move on to the next phase as an alum. So that's a big part of it. We work very closely with marketing and communications to help provide them, and they're very they rely heavily. They just hired someone who's very strong in analytics. And so they're really trying to use technology to drive good
Wow.
leads to the admission department through their marketing campaigns. And so they're trying to tie everything together. So we are a support role and work very closely with the departments. Right now, we're just evaluating the donor management side of things to see how it can tie in with our current system and what the best solution for them is. So
Interesting. No, I love this. I mean, this is exactly what I was hoping to hear, because one of the reasons why I wanted you on the podcast is last week, or last episode, I should say, we talked to University of Kentucky. After this, Jesse Minton from the University of Oregon is coming on. And my biggest takeaway as I get to meet really cool people like y'all on the road is we're all facing the same challenges. And it's really coming down to leadership that's getting us ahead of these problems and how we solve them. It's not so much the technology itself. And that leads me to two final questions and then a funny question. So three questions. You mentioned finance and personnel. And this comes up everywhere we go, no matter the size of the institution. From a personnel standpoint, you mentioned your director of enterprise apps have been around for 25 years. How do you attract talent in Ripon is the first part of it. And then two, whether it's your ERP or CRM or whatever it may be, how do you leverage partnerships to deliver the technology services that you're looking to? And then the question that you hear everywhere is, well, what about budget? How do you balance a budget that needs to be innovative and drive future of technology, but then also deliver the operating side of the business, like the ERP and the infrastructure? So a couple of questions in there. Personnel and finance, how do you handle that?
So luckily for us, and this can be good and bad. I mean, there could be positives and negatives, but the people who are hired here have a tendency to stay. It is a very close-knit community, and people really get vested in the college. It's a great environment to work in. I will just say that. So we don't, luckily for us in IT, we haven't had a lot of turnover. I've hired two positions since I've been here, who they're now here, they've been here since. And so as far as recruiting, it behooves you, when you're recruiting it's a special individual, let's say that, because they have to know, and you have to be very honest with the environment and the work environment they're going to be becoming a part of if they join the team, right? So I think a big part of personnel is really knowing who would be a good fit for this, and really being honest and open about the work environment and making sure it's a good fit for them so that they can make that decision. Once they're on board, then keeping them here is important, and that's the managerial side of things, obviously. So there's that funny saying, you want to train them well enough so that they're attractable and they can leave, but they don't want to, kind of a mentality. So really providing for them, trying to create a work environment where they can flourish and they can feel some success and be a part of the team. So, personnel things, I think we have an easier time college-wide. I'm sure they have more of a challenge, but
right.
So second question was, refresh my mind. What was the second one?
Partnerships. So with such a small team, like you clearly are relying on partners for your ERP and CRM and infrastructure. How do you choose what to partner for and what to build in-house?
So vendor relations are a huge, important part for us. And so we've been fortunate enough that when we do an RFP, our leadership sees the importance and the value of strong partner relationships. So they don't require that we automatically go with the lowest bid. They do value and take into consideration some of those other things. And so establishing those relationships and those working relationships, it's about really working to find someone who's a good fit for our needs and understanding our environment. And then balancing that. We'd love to have the Cadillac of everything, but obviously have to be realistic with our budget and really do our due diligence in planning. to make sure that we understand the needs and how this, whatever it is that we're buying or providing, what the function is, so that we can right size it and find a good solution. Because we are limited, right? And so when you talk about financially, how do you do that? Again, a lot of partnerships are really important to us on our financial side of things. We work with our consortium of private schools in Wisconsin, and we have some leveraging power cost savings through some consortial arrangements. So our software licenses, like our Microsoft license, some of our larger ticket items, we get better pricing on by going through these consortial agreements.
Right.
Our ERP is a part of that. So that we've really found a lot of cost savings being able to take advantage of some of those opportunities. Leasing equipment has helped us to be able to keep our stuff fresh and new, and makes it easier for us to budget and manage when you talk about fiscal responsibilities. And then making smart decisions institutionally can save money. Like when everybody's doing their own thing and kind of chopping up the budget, you end up wasting money. So it's the whole, when they say work smarter, not harder, it's kind of the same thing with spending. You can get the exact same products for less money if you just put a little bit of time and effort into planning and working with the other departments on campus. And so we've found a lot of ways to manage things and get more bang for our buck just by spending a little bit of time building those relationships and working with others and planning things on an institutional level.
And I've seen that truth come out too with vendor relationships. Even though I sit on that side of the fence, if you will, I think when there's better collaboration and conversation in general, everyone can align their incentives accordingly. So you're so right, like spend smart, not wide, if you will. I love that. That was really, really well said. I think you had one more point. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got excited by that comment. So what was your third and last point with the finance part of it?
It was really just the kind of the vendor relationships and in evaluating where does it make sense, and and putting the time in to evaluate what is actually the cost of providing a service. When you look at manpower and you look at all of the factors, you know, that sometimes you underestimate the cost of having 100 LaserJet printers around campus because you're not taking into consideration the labor that's involved in maintaining that, right? But when you look wide scale at the total cost of us having that environment, it was a no-brainer for us to move to manage print and, you know, partner with that. You know, when we looked at Apogee for providing our services, it just so happened, and it's funny, this is how I met you actually initially, was the Ortha TV part of it for our digital signage around campus. And so looking at things that we could roll into that and, you know, cost savings that we could gain just by working with you to really talk about everything that we needed on our campus and have those open discussions helped us to make some good decisions that way. So.
Oh, I love it. I appreciate that. And my last question is going to be the hardest one, and I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, but you are an incredible and avid golfer. What's the greatest round of golf you've ever had, and what's the worst thing you've ever done on a golf course?
Oh, that's funny. Okay, I have to say my greatest round of golf ever is that my partner, Kabinga, is an excellent golfer.
I've seen it.
Challenged me to a round when pretty early on in our relationship years, and so you know I'm competitive also, as you would know, and so put the challenge up, and he said he would give me 5 strokes. So give me 5 strokes. Well, but I also golf from the closest tees, and he golfs from the furthest, so that's also a huge advantage, right? So so given that advantage, then he was going to give me 5 strokes. Needless to say, when we were coming up on the 18th hole, we were tied, or very close. He chipped in, and that was without the 5-stroke advantage.
Oh, wow.
So I golfed like out of my mind that day, and it was really funny because I could just see he doesn't like to lose either. So I have to say that was probably my best round of golf and when I enjoyed the most. Short of, Orlando and golfing down there.
Right.
That was fun. But the funniest thing that's ever happened to me on the golf course. That's a tough one. I have had so many positive experiences.
There you go. You only remember the good things. I love it.
One. It's funny because so much of my focus isn't really on the performance of how I golf. It's the social part of who I'm with, and so
Totally.
I've made some great friendships through golf, and just have really enjoyed my time there. So I wish I had a funnier story for you, Rajiv. I feel like I'm letting you down on this one. I could make something up. Maybe?
It's fine. I love the positive attitude. I only remember the good moments because that's actually good for golf. I should be the same way. I only remember my good shots. Well, anyways, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fun. I personally learned a ton, and I'm positive that the vast majority of our listeners will appreciate the perspective of a rural, small school and how leadership is so important. So thank you so much. Please don't hang up just yet. We're going to stop recording, and I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.